Welcome back to the Straight from the Crest podcast. I'm your host, Michael David Kresovich. Season 3, Episode 5.
Welcome to the Straight
A lot
from the
to get
Crest
to today.
podcast.
Packed show as we continue to really lay out the college football landscape. We begin the show by previewing Penn State's homecoming match this weekend, 3:30 kick against the Minutemen of UMass. And we're going to drift into our segment where we kind of break down our top 3 games. We're going to give our predictions. And at the end of the show, we're going to list our top 4 teams. First and foremost, as always, you can see the flag behind me. This podcast is brought to you by Protocol Beverage. Their mission was to cater the needs of those who strive for excellence in every aspect of your life, whether you're an avid fitness enthusiast or a driven professional or a social butterfly. Protocol Beverage is designed to complement your dynamic lifestyle. Must be 21 to enjoy, as we say. Guys, go try it out. A lot of big things coming from them, which we'll mention in the upcoming weeks. Garrett, welcome to the show today. How was your time in College Station?
Hi, Mikey. Thanks for having me on. As you can see, it's spooky season down here in Texas, as it is across the country. It was good. I had fun with my family and my cousins from Friday evening to about 2:30 Central Time, really until about actually like 4:30 Central Time. And then after that, it wasn't a whole lot of fun. Fighting Texas Aggies could not get it done in a game that they really, really, really needed to have. And so Alabama's still the king of the SEC West, and nobody wants to take them off their perch, and it's just the way it is. So I'm a little dejected about it, but we got Penn State. So the last several years I've been used to A&M being knocked out of the playoff race by this time of year. So it's nothing too crazy.
Well, they're one of the highlighted games this week. And we'll get to the Aggies later. But first, like you said, let's talk some Penn State football. Coming off a bye week, 5-0, returning at home. Feels like they've really played at home much this year. It's been a few weeks since they shut out Iowa. And now they welcome a 1-5 UMass team who's coming in with a 17-point loss to Toledo a week ago. And it's kind of a spot for Penn State to kind of get right as they move into this brutal part of their schedule. And UMass is a team to do that. They have a 45-point loss to Auburn. They've been outscored by almost 100 points in total on the road this season. So we're going to kind of just do a flyover of their personnel, what to expect in the game. Not really much X's and O's talk in this week's preview of Penn State football. It's going to be a more kind of highlights what we see, what to look out for as you're watching this game. It's homecoming weekend. It should be a pretty packed crowd there in State College. But like I said, yeah, it's been a while since UMass won a game. They won their opener and they've kind of lost 5 straight. Part of the independent conference there, the Minutemen, a couple studs on their offense. But Penn State's the superior team. As you guys can see below, the line in the total favors the Nittany Lions, of course. Garrett, the leading question that we ask every week going in, what are you looking forward to seeing from Penn State this weekend?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, the weather is going to be an issue again for the second straight home game for Penn State. It looks like a day full of rain, cool temperatures. And so, I would obviously like to see, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, and later in the pod, but I'd like to see the ball pushed down the field a little bit and just see that we have the potential to do that. And so that, on that end, I'm looking for some more explosivity, if you will, in the air, but then also get the running game going in explosive fashion. Those are the 2 big things. I think that's what everybody really wants to see. It's nothing groundbreaking. But things are about to get real. We're 10 days away from, the biggest game of the season to date. And so this is kind of not that things have been wrong, but it is a little bit of a get right game for Penn State. And so those are the 2 big things. I think the defense is not going to have an issue on Saturday. And so, get the ball going through the air and let's see the running game get going.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as I mentioned previously, UMass has struggled on the road and Penn State's been terrific at home. Penn State's outscored their opponents 110-23 at home, and the majority of those points came in the opener against West Virginia, of course, the shutout, and then the Delaware game where they scored a touchdown. And on the opposition, UMass has been outscored 100. They've put up 183 points in road games and allowed 276 points against. These teams did meet back in 2014, their first ever meeting. So it's just the second time these schools are getting together. Penn State won that one 48-7. Familiar name across James Franklin this weekend as Don Brown leads these Minutemen to Beaver Stadium. And Penn State's very familiar with Don Brown for a lot of reasons. He was an assistant under Franklin, or with Franklin at Maryland, part of they're both beginning their coaching tree. He was also an assistant at Mansfield University.
In Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And it's his third stint at UMass. He was the DC there in 2004. He was the head coach he was in DC there in 98, head coach in 2004. Back there, he just won his second game. I mean, he took over kind of an abysmal team, and he's won 2 games there in terms of that. But most notably, he was the defensive coordinator at Michigan. And listening to Franklin, Franklin thinks very highly. He even noted when he worked at Maryland, when they would scheme against one another in practice, kind of Franklin built his philosophy on Don Brown's defense. That's how they were against each other in practice. That's what happened there. And they got a couple of studs, 3 guys in particular that you're going to hear their name. K'Ron Lynch-Adams is their running back. He's actually 7th in the country in rushing yards. He has 6 touchdowns. And on the outside, Anthony Simpson, he's the 10th leading receiver in terms of yards. And they have a good kick returner. I mean, they give up a lot of points, and they're going to have a decent amount of opportunity this weekend as Penn State's lit up the scoreboard. But their kick returner, DeRozay, he's actually 2nd in the country in return yards. So that's just a name to keep an eye on. But yeah, that's in terms of personnel, they've got some spots there. Their defense kind of susceptible to big play, which I kind of want to talk about right now because Penn State right now, their second leading receiver is Tyler Warren, and that shouldn't be the case. We talked about after week 1 the likes of we know what Keandre Lambert-Smith's capable. Garrett, if there's a name not named Keandre Lambert-Smith, who's primed to have a big game receiving this weekend for Penn State and kind of give us more confidence as we move forward into the heart of the Big Ten schedule?
Yeah. There's a few names on that list, Dante Cephas being one of them, Harrison Wallace, Malik McClain, the transfer from Florida State. All guys that if Penn State is going to, run the table and have a chance to be in the playoff conversation in a very crowded field this year, those guys are going to have to, pull their weight at some point. Keandre Lambert-Smith is starting to single himself out a bit as that sort of KJ Hamler, Jahan Dotson, Penn State's typical 1 guy at wide receiver. But who's going to be the 2? Who's going to be the 3? Nobody has really stood out, like you mentioned. And so, I think that's going to be the key to the season. You see teams like Notre Dame, for example, your Fighting Irish Mikey, has a great quarterback in Sam Hartman, right? But they are really, really struggling to get anything explosive going because their wide receivers can't get separation. I'm a little bit concerned that Penn State is starting to fall a little bit in the same issue where, have a great quarterback, have good running backs, a good tight end room, and the wide receivers are just, for the caliber of the rest of the roster, lacking. That's just on the field. I think they're very talented. I think they're good players. We just need to see more outside of Keandre Lambert-Smith. So those are some of the names. Dante Cephas has been getting more and more production each week, and so hopefully that continues to build up as we get deeper into the season. But again, time's almost out. I don't know how much different we're going to see this week against UMass. Hopefully they just come out with everything they've got and guns blazing when they come against Ohio State. But those are some of the names that we gotta see get going if there's going to be a big push here in the second half of the year.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Penn State's ranked 132nd in FBS, dead last in explosive plays, and this is a time to really, to really increase that.
That's
And
not good.
we're gonna get into offensive philosophy and touch on Coach Franklin's press conference with what he had to say. But they do have a four-star quarterback, former Georgia Tech and Clemson quarterback, and he's a decent athlete. And Tyson Pumachan, like he's 6'4", he's a big guy. So it's not Delaware, but I mean, it's a chance for Penn State to kind of get things right. I'm really interested to see because I think we kind of jumped to conclusion in terms of having the number 2 wide receiver position solidified. I think, like you said, I expected more to McLean, and I think it's just an early in the season thing. I know just talking to the guys who we know inside the program, they just need to find their fit, and I'm not worried about it. I don't know. Like I said, we're going to talk into this after this segment about the whole offensive philosophy. Like, I don't think we're holding anything back. I think we're just showing our potential, which kind of scares me. But let's move into our prediction segment. I don't want to necessarily talk about who's going to win this game because we know, and we're actually opposite sides of this in terms of outcome. The line below, as you guys can see, it's hovering around 42, 43. Garrett, you don't think the Nittany Lions cover?
No, I think UMass. I mean, yeah, they got the doors beaten off of them at Auburn, which is not a good. No loss 59-14 is good under any circumstances, but it's not like Auburn is Alabama this year. They're a shell of what they usually are. But UMass has a close loss to Eastern Michigan, a loss in overtime against New Mexico, and they were leading a pretty game Toledo team who almost beat Illinois week 1 late in the fourth quarter until Toledo kind of poured it on right at the end. And so I think 42 is a lot of points in this, and maybe I will be wrong, but I think Penn State. I'm not worried about them winning whatsoever. Obviously, I think they just kind of build into the game, and it ends up being something that's like 42-10, 45-10, and so not close. But if we're looking at the line, I just don't think Penn State covers. Which on the other end of the spectrum, Mike, you have a different belief.
Yeah, my model pumped out 56-3 Penn State victory. I think
the MK poll.
Yeah, and if you have a problem with it, you can email it. The model, it's what it pumps out. It's not me. I have 56-3. I really think we see the culmination of the explosive play, and to kind of just we threw that term out. And I get this info from CFB stats. You guys can find this all online. It's free info. But they grade that as a 12-yard run or a 16-yard pass. Penn State's dead last in the country. And you can say what you want about it. Like, I know there's a very, very large group of conservative football thinkers who want nothing to do with this.
Hey! We don't have to get into politics here, Mike. Come on.
You're right. But it's an important one because all 4 of last year's college football teams, Garrett, ranked top 20 in explosive play ranking. The 3 of them were in the top 7, and the only exception was Michigan, and they were 17th. And Michigan's predicated on a heavy tight end set that relies on those kind of dick and dunks where they're going to throw it around and immunity.
Well, pause.
Immunity.
I think you're looking for dink and dunk.
Yeah, I think so. But it's a very important stat, and let's kind of go over that. First touchdown score. Let's get that out of the way. Who's scoring the first touchdown for Penn State?
Nicholas Singleton. I think I don't know in which fashion, but he's going to score a touchdown. He's going to score a first touchdown this weekend. He's
actually another guy that kind of fell in production. I mean, if you just look at the numbers, you can see. But Garrett, his average yards per rush last year was 6.8. He ended the season with. He's at 3.8 right now, and that's 5 games of sample size compared to 12. And he's played. This is before they've even gotten into the Big Ten schedule. I don't count Northwestern, Illinois, or I'm only going to count the good defenses here. And he did that against that talent, so that's another area. So you have Singleton. I really think, and this is going to transition perfectly into our next segment before we get into our favorite alumnus from UMass. If you guys missed it, Central PA reporter, really national reporter now, Corey Geiger, who I have a lot of respect for. We kind of worked along underneath the same company at my previous employer. And I've followed him on radio in State College since I was in middle school. He's a great writer, just a great football mind. And he kind of asked a question to Coach Franklin along the lines of, why don't you just chuck it down, throw down the field? And he had a point. Trace McSorley when he was a quarterback at Penn State, there's a stat. It's called average depth of target. It grants not where the receiver ends up, it's where he catches the ball. McSorley was leading the Big Ten his senior year. Drew Allar right now nationally is ranked 79th in average depth of target. He's tied with Taquan Robertson. Penn State legend Taquan Robertson, Iowa Slayer. And that's just an area where Penn State needs to air it out. But let's dive into that, because Corey brought up an issue, and maybe he didn't word it in the best way possible, but he brought up kind of something. He shined a light on that. What do you make of that? I'll just say that. What do you make of that? The issue, not the question, not necessarily the question, just the issue of that.
The issue is, you kind of addressed the question. The question, and he addressed it today. I mean, I've listened to Corey Geiger for a long time. I think he knows that he could not have worded that question any more poorly than how he did. I get the point that he was trying to make is Drew Allar missing the deep shots? Is he missing that read? Not, do you ever just tell him to go up and chuck it? And it's kind of annoying because it's a very valid question as to okay, why aren't there explosive plays happening? Coach Franklin in his presser all the time talks about winning the explosive play battle. And this is probably, in the last several years, this is probably the worst year for explosive plays for Penn State. And so, I think we've been talking about it since we started noticing this pattern, I think week 3, maybe, when we did the Delaware pod. It was just or week 2 or week 3, hey, other than a 71-yard or 78-yard touchdown throw in the first drive of the year against West Virginia, there hasn't been a touchdown throw longer than 15 yards for Drew. And so that is, certainly a concern. And I think the question was asked, worded very poorly, but the point he was trying to get, and Coach Franklin's going to seize on questions not asked the correct way, especially if it's going to be a criticism. And I think he's has all the right to kind of disperse any notion that Trace McSorley was just chucking the ball up, right? Or Sean was just chucking the ball up. They're never actually chucking it up. It's a read. It's going and trusting your guy on a one-on-one. That's how the question should be asked, rather than if he's covered at 30 yards but he thinks he's going to be open at 45, do you just tell him to chuck it no matter what? That's the wrong premise. I do want to mention one thing real quick, that on the other side of the spectrum, very interesting stats, is that Penn State's somehow top 25 in total rushing yards this year. And then also, this one might surprise you. Guess who was number 1 in the country in time of possession? Penn State. Very interesting. That is just something that, number 2 is Air Force. Number 8 is Army. It's the ball control teams. It's a very weird offense. No explosion, but number 1 in turnovers, number 1 in time of possession. They are literally controlling games like you have chew clock on and playing NCAA, right? Is that going to work? I don't know. If you keep doing it exactly like this, yeah, I think it can work. You can win a national championship this way, but it's a much, much tighter margin of error.
I mean, if they keep taking the ball away and keeping the ball, it's a recipe to set up success. It kind of emulates what Michigan does. Michigan's got a better O-line.
Georgia too.
Georgia's staple there. But Penn State's defense is top in the country, and their offense really is too. But as we dig deeper into that, we found that Penn State's struggling. And my apologies, there's just a correction. Our stat guy and producer, Chris Herb, and apologies for all the technical malfunctions. last weekend with my microphone. The quality was down. Chris had some problems setting it up, but Drew Allar is actually 137th in the country in average depth of target. Yards per attempt, he's 79th to Taquan Robertson. So,
and he's last in the Big Ten in balls thrown through the air.
Yeah, he's efficient. He's efficient. PFF has him as their 9th rated quarterback. So he's getting the job done. He's just not doing it to set up long-term success to what these other quarterbacks are doing.
Yeah.
Alrighty. And we're kind of now going to but actually, before we go into the college football, let's just draft our top 3 favorite alum from UMass first. Before we do that, this is a segment that we've done for 3 years now. Just kind of helps you guys out when you're at a tailgate. You can say, "Hey, did you know this guy went here?" No way. Yeah. So just some quick ones. You go first. The model says this week. So,
I'll go Marcus Camby, number 1.
Julius Irving, number 2.
Okay. And you get to go again.
Rick Pitino.
Rick Pitino went to UMass.
It worked. I told you. What did I say, guys? I said this is why we do this.
Okay. So I want to say that it's most famous UMass alumni, not most favorite, and I preface that before my second pick being Bill Cosby. Just want to make that clear because he's not.
Great disclaimer.
Yeah.
I guess you're up again.
Yeah. There's just not a lot of famous UMass alums. I'm gonna go Taj Mahal, the blues musician, not the building.
Okay, I have 2 picks here tied to round it up. Neil Brown, who actually was already at Beaver Stadium this year.
Wow.
And that's actually it. I'm not going to say the last one. I'll tell you later. That's it. So,
gosh.
Now we're going to transition into the rest of the show. So if you only watch this because you're a college football fan and not a Penn State fan, now's the time to tune in. Crazy weekend last weekend. Garrett was down in College Station there for Bama, Texas A&M, which we'll dive into the Aggies game this weekend as they play Tennessee. But first and foremost, I think this is going to be one of the better games of not this weekend, of the season. It has the potential to be a 7 versus 10 matchup. 2 kind of Heisman front runners, Michael Penix Jr., who when he was at Indiana, no one really expected, and Bo Nix, when Bo Nix was at Auburn, no one really expected. Penn State played both these quarterbacks, and
that's actually crazy.
It's
a crazy fun fact. You're all full of crazy fun facts tonight.
Producer Chris, he lays it out for us, and I just regurgitate the information. So really, 2 great offenses here, Garrett. Oregon is more well-rounded. I think their defense is a little better than Washington State's. I'm sorry. Yeah, Washington, not Washington State. They do have a better defense than Washington State. The line's hovering right now at 3.5, Washington way. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, you have Michael Penix, who's thrown 16 touchdowns so far. You have Bo Nix, who's thrown 15 touchdowns so far. Both teams are very explosive. Both averaging well over 550 yards a game offensively. The only difference is Oregon's defense is far and away better than Washington's. And so I don't think Oregon is going to score under 35 points. The question is, can Washington match that? I think the line is Washington minus 2.5. And I know the game's on the road, but I think the wrong team's favored. I think Oregon, with a defensive-minded Dan Lanning, as their head coach, who came from Georgia, I think they're a very complete team. I mean, they were in my top 3 last week when we did our rankings. So I think Oregon wins, which means I also think they cover. But I do think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be something like 42-35, 42-38. Probably the last team to have the ball wins it at the end.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I'm with Oregon. I'm with you. I'm on Oregon, and let's go into the Aggies because you were there. They're coming off just a heart-wrenching loss to Bama, where they were up at the half and really saw that lead slip away late, and Bama ran away with it. Tennessee's rested. They're coming off a bye here in this situation, which is a brutal spot for the Aggies. It's Tennessee's rush versus Bama's rush defense. That's kind of the matchup I'm looking there. And are you rolling with the Aggies here?
Probably not. A&M hasn't won a true road game since, you're not going to believe this, 2021. It's a pretty bad stat. They've lost 7 in a row on the road. I think it's a competitive game. I think it's probably close. But Tennessee has a similar offensive output to Alabama, where they have a quarterback who struggles but has a rocket for an arm. And A&M's weakness is their secondary. I would venture to say A&M might have the best defensive line in the country. Them and Penn State are probably 1 and 2. I mean, their defensive front is very good. They run a 3-3-5, so really their front 6 is very, very good. Their back 5 is a struggle right now with anybody who has any sort of arm talent. And so I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. The over-under is 56. I don't think this comes close. Now, I know I said I didn't think the Georgia-Kentucky over-under last week comes close. I really don't think this over-under comes close. I'd be surprised if this game gets above 45 points. I think Tennessee probably wins 21-17, 20-17, something like that. Something that also was really pointed out to me last week in the game, the A&M game versus Alabama. A&M is really missing Connor Wegman, their 5-star quarterback who, PFF and others were ranking him, in the top 3 quarterbacks in the country when it comes to efficiency, the number 1 quarterback in the SEC. While Max Johnson has had a lot of experience, can move a little bit with his feet, you're starting to see the glaring difference for A&M when it comes to Wegman being able to get the ball to guys like Evan Stewart and Noah Thomas and Moose Muhammad rather than Max Johnson. And so the offense is going to struggle. Tennessee actually plays a little bit of defense. So that's kind of the take on that. And the big thing with that is, A&M only has 1 loss in the SEC West. But they lose this game, it really knocks them out of the SEC West chase, and it really just emboldens Alabama. I can't stress enough that, like, when you have the chance to knock, like, for example, Florida State knocked Clemson off its perch, right? They had the chance to go do it, and they did it. And which to the benefit of the whole entire ACC. The same thing goes with the SEC West. Teams like A&M and LSU had their chance this year against Alabama. I don't think Nick Saban's, at least as long as he's coaching, is going to let another transfer portal season go by where he doesn't pick up a Sam Hartman, right? Or he doesn't pick up a big transfer quarterback. They're a quarterback away from being the number 1 team in the country. Everybody wants to bury Alabama. But so the SEC West race just opens or gets, a little bit wider with an A&M loss this weekend. So Vols win, I think.
Yeah, let's move to the next game because Mario Cristobal, head scratcher last weekend, take a knee and they win the ball game. Now they got to go play UNC, but it's not really much of a home field advantage for UNC because in the last 6 years they've had 2 winning seasons at home. So we're either going to see
another stat, Mike.
We're really going to see a very energized Miami team that comes out, or they're just going to fold. It's 3.5 Miami. I do think Miami wins this game outright. I don't think UNC's played anyone to what Miami's played. Miami has played some dogs this year. They've played no teams named dogs. They haven't played Georgia, but they've played some good football teams. Do you think Miami hangs around this game, or do you think it's a UNC kind of runaway?
Man, I don't know. It's really hard to come off of what they did last week. So the game, for those who didn't watch, like, the game's over, right? So there's 35 seconds left, 40 seconds on the play clock. Miami just has to literally kneel the ball, and it's over. 99.9% FPI win percentage chance. Mikey loves when I cite those numbers. This game is the reason why it's not 100%. Miami fumbles the ball. Georgia Tech recovers, scores 2 plays later with Haynes King, former Texas A&M quarterback at quarterback. I like the Heels here. I think that they're better on defense. I think their secondary is much improved from years past. And so they just really stomped a good Syracuse team. I think UNC is playing good football. And we're going to see how mentally tough this Miami team is. The wheels came off last year. This would be a situation where the wheels can come off here. So I like North Carolina, and I like them to cover 3.5 as well. It does surprise me, the home record for UNC the last several years. But, for Penn State's sake, it would probably be good if Miami wins this game, but I think North Carolina wins it and stays undefeated.
Okay, we're on opposite sides there too. That's great.
Okay. Yeah.
Going into the last game, another showdown, the night game. Caleb Williams at USC coming into South Bend to face the Irish, and the Irish really have fallen. Talk about wheels falling off the track. They're 1-2 in their last 3 games, and they welcome a dangerous USC team. Although USC didn't really impress me last weekend. A lot of offensive firepower, a great Notre Dame defense. I'm really interested just to sit back and watch this game. USC's allowed 40 points in their last 2 games, and they've won it. If they do it this game, they're not going to beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense is too good. The Irish are favored by 2.5. I like them to win by a touchdown here.
Yeah, you like the Irish to win by a touchdown?
I do. I do.
Yeah, it's going to come down to if USC gives up 40 points to Notre Dame, they'll win by 10 plus. I wonder if Notre Dame has enough firepower on offense to score. The most they've scored all year. Let me just make sure I have this correct. Is 40. They did score 56 points against Tennessee State, but against teams in FBS, the most points they've scored is 45 against NC State. They really just have not proven to have a lot of firepower on offense, even though they have a great quarterback in Sam Hartman. I think USC does enough with having Caleb Williams at quarterback to win the game outright. So obviously that means I think they'll cover with them getting 3.5. I think they'll win in Vegas, and I think they win on the field as well. But I'm not impressed with USC at all. I think Notre Dame is going to. This is a brutal 4-game stretch for them. Their backs are against the wall here. You drop to 5-3. It's going to be pretty tough to salvage a pretty good season, given the quarterback that they have under center. And so I still think USC probably, much to my dismay. I don't really, if there's a team in the country, I try to be pretty, I don't like the University of Michigan very much. I don't like Texas. USC is starting to get up there too. I don't like how Lincoln Riley does things there. I think that they're wasting probably a generational quarterback talent by just absolutely refusing to play defense. They won't do it. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how you're paid $11 million a year and you can't allocate some of the funds within your program to go out and get the coordinator you need to win. This team has an offensive talent to win a national championship, but defensively they're not serious. I just don't think they are. But long story short, I do think they win this game just because of Notre Dame, what they've had to go through the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I think this is the Super Bowl for the Irish. I think they've realized that their college football playoff hopes are crushed, and I think this is a time to say, hey, America's watching. I know Sam Hartman's going to be up and ready to go. He's been spectacular this year. It's going to be a fun game to watch. And we're going to wrap up the show today and bring you guys our final 4 teams. And this is if the season ends today, who would be playing this week in the college football playoff. This segment is brought to you by Miller's Tropical Snow. Guys, inside Gate A, north entrance, in the kids zone, stop by, get some Hawaiian shaved ice. Tell them the YouTube channel brought you here. Just say Crest told me to go here and get some Hawaiian shaved ice. It might not be 90 degrees and sunny, but it's still delicious. So Miller's Tropical Snow is the sponsor here for this segment. We're going to give our top 4 teams. These are if the season ended today. And I know that's not fair because some teams are yet to get into conference play yet, but this is who we have. I'm going to kick it off here. And I think the number 1 team in the land right now is Georgia. As I mentioned last week, until they're dethroned, they have the right to be the number 1 team. And after their performance, they solidified their position. I did mention if Texas won, they would be Texas. And I still think Texas is on the outside looking in. I have them at 7 in my ranking. Michigan's my number 2 team. I think both sides on the ball, just the efficiency Michigan's played with, they kind of make that they're in the group of Georgia. I have Ohio State 3rd. contrary to belief, I think Ohio State's still a very good football team. I think their resiliency they showed in the second half last weekend to really pull away from Maryland, they're third. My fourth team is Florida State. I think Florida State, who they've played and what they've shown, they have the right to be that number 4 team. Now, granted, if they played Georgia, I would think Georgia would be an 8.5, 9-point favorite. I like the Bulldogs in that. But that's my final 4. Garrett, the season ended today. Who's going to the college football playoff?
Yeah. It's so hard to rank. I had Ohio State 1 last week, so I'll keep them 1 this week. I had Texas 2 and Oregon 3. Texas obviously drops out. So I'll go Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, Georgia 3. Kind of jumping up from my 5 spot, I believe I had them in last week. And so, yeah, Ohio State 1, Oregon 2, Georgia 3, and Florida State 4. With Oklahoma, Penn State, and Michigan all just right there, 5 through 7. It's really hard. I mean, we haven't even Oregon and Washington both could be up there too. But I think the top 4, Ohio State 1, they've proved enough to me on both sides of the ball. They play good complementary football. That they're I think they're probably the best team in the country right now. But like I said, the top 8 really are interchangeable.
Yeah, I think so. And last week I said if Texas won, they should be number 1. My stone cold
we both said that.
Pick of the week is this week. If Oregon beats Washington, I think Oregon deserves to be that number 4 team. Just because it's going to be a test for both of them, and in general, just a great weekend of football ahead of us. Thank you guys so much for listening. In general, we do really appreciate your support. Garrett, thank you as always for coming on here today.
Yeah.
And everyone have a safe weekend.
Thank you, Mikey.
Enjoy spooky season. Take care.